So we have a ton of content to go through. I am not going to stand up here and talk to you guys the entire time. Instead, you're going to hear from a variety of different people that have helped enable the capabilities that we're talking about. So this is consider it an update, consider it resource availability, consider it how we're here to help you, consider it whatever you want, but we're going to talk about test beds. So first off, test beds are, by our definition, are much more than just assets in a room. We have the people that help make it. You'll talk to or hear from at least a number of those people as they present. It's the science problems that need to be solved in terms of co-simulation, federation, data generation, cohesion on cyber-physical impact, et cetera. It's the assets as well, the hardware, the software, the modeling tools, et cetera, that enable us. And then it's also data. And so data is one of those sticky things. We have all sorts of data, and we have all sorts of restrictions on the way that we can share that data. So let's just say that data enables us, and how we look at using data is that rather than sharing the utility-specific data we have, we try to extract metadata from that allows us to characterize and behave in the same way as the systems through the tools that we generate by solving some of those science problems. The testbed itself then does asset provisioning, and it does that mostly locally, but we also have the ability to provision things in cloud instances, as you've seen in like summer school events and other things that allow us to carry out our work. So I talked about people. Here's some of the people. So since you're not going to see video of us and instead just hear our words, there's some faces to put to it. We have one who doesn't like his picture taken, so you get a nice generic man for Edmund. But you'll also see that there are two generic entities on the left. So we have two new employees that are starting, and there's a whole bunch more, which is what the ellipses stands for, that we'll be bringing onto the team, not necessarily under CREDC, but under a variety of projects under ITI. So a little bit about Lineage on where the testbed started. This isn't something that is new for those that are involved with us. Historically, you'll know that this has been something that's been worked on since the original NSF days. So this started in 2005, in essence, and it's grown in lots of different ways. In 2016, we were awarded a very large contract from DARPA to the tune of $18.7 million that allows us to focus purely on the testbed rather than just the testbed as a vehicle associated with lots of the other funding we have. So there's all sorts of new capabilities and new features and tools and other things that are funded by that effort that definitely come into play and are leveraged across any effort that we have. So why testbeds? And the real key for this is that what we're developing in some way, shape, or form is technology that's intended to protect critical infrastructure. It's intended to protect the electric power grid. It's intended to protect oil and gas, et cetera. So this is mission critical technology. Even if we don't think about that, we're solving research problems. But what we're actually trying when this gets in practice to be impactful is to save that critical infrastructure. And therefore, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm developing something that my life may depend on, I want to make sure it's going to work when it gets out there so that I don't die and other people don't die, if that's what it's intended to protect. So let's dial it up a notch or dial it down a notch. Instead of people dying, we want our infrastructure to stay on. When I turn on my lights, I want my lights to stay on. And I want to make sure that the technology that we develop goes through sufficient rigor so that we know that if it's designed to help us keep the lights on or to be more resilient, that it does that in the real world, not just in a lab environment. So the capabilities, however, to prove that out are not fully available today. You can't take something and create a full-fledged reality of what the electric power grid does and all of its nuances, or what oil and gas does and all of its nuances in any lab environment today, short of throwing millions of dollars, billions of dollars, or perhaps trillions of dollars at it, depending on where you're attempting to solve a research problem at. And so the last part is, well, how do you close that gap? How do you move from trillion-dollar expenses of real infrastructure and the complexities of that and the enablement of people that can work on that with OSHA requirements and other things like that and create a faithful representation of that that captures reality to a level of rigor we've never captured before. And right now, the answer to that is testbeds. But testbeds in their current form can't do that. So we have to advance the state of art in cyber experimentation or cyber physical experimentation so that we can do that. And a testbed is essential to advancing that. So our general approach to this is to use models that we drive based on real data. So we get real utility configurations, real topologies, real data sets, and we create models of those that incorporate both the cyber and physical aspects. We try to develop these models, the tools, et cetera, in a modular way so that it's not just, oh, I have this particular scenario, and that's the only scenario I have. It's, I have this scenario, and it has these 10 different things that can happen on the scenario, pick and choose. And that scenario may include one distribution substation, one transmission substation, one control center, et cetera. If I want more distribution substations, those are modules. I can add more. If I want more transmission, I can add more. If I want more control centers, I can add more, et cetera. And I can build up these modules like Lego blocks to create something that meets my needs rather than trying to tailor my research to someone else's needs. Another important aspect is instrumentation. So instrumentation is key for rigor. If you don't know what is going on in the experiment and you're not capturing the data to have the visibility to analyze what is going on, then what can you prove? Nothing. I got an end result that said it was okay, but I don't have any provenance that actually shows that it was okay. So one of the things we've agreed to under CREDC, or pushed forward under CREDC, is to capture data at new levels, things that we have never done before, and try wherever possible to release not just the data, but the models and everything else that's necessary to prove out and repeat our work so that others can build upon it. The last part is knowledge. So there are tons of brilliant people involved in CREDC. You guys all have knowledge in particular domains. You're becoming experts in your particular PhD topics. You're maybe already experts in topics. Pete's an expert in pretty much everything. So, you know, he is a wealth of knowledge that we can tap. But how do we get the information out of those people's heads, like out of Pete's head, and put it into everyone else so that Pete doesn't have to repeat that knowledge 24/7, 365 to every new person that needs that piece of knowledge? And so we're developing knowledge bases trying to capture this, which are lessons learned through things like verification and validation, lessons learned in building these models. Oh, that's how the real world works, lessons learned when we talk to utilities, et cetera, and bring these into a place where has some sort of organization where people can go and take this knowledge out. So an example, I'll pick on Varun here. Varun has done some great work. Varun has won at least one Best Paper award, I believe, maybe more, and he learned things along the way. When a handful of presentations ago, Varun was commenting on somebody else's work and said, you know, here's some references that you may want to look at that were useful techniques that I used in something that was similar to this. That's great knowledge. How do we capture that, maintain that, so that people can make those causal links when Varun is no longer here? So that's fine from an academic perspective. We can do a lot from that. But we also have industry partners we interface with or that we're supposed to be interfacing with. We have government that can provide certain information to us. And then we have the practitioners, per se, the utilities, which you could call them industry too. But I'll differentiate between the asset owners and the vendors in this particular case. The asset owners that tell us how they really do it, rather than what theory may say, or where they cut corners, or other things that change how the work will actually be able to prove out in the real world, or things that we just failed to grasp. We try to capture that too. So what's available to those that need it today? What do we have? So 10,000-mile view, we have a physical testbed. You can come visit our physical testbed, you can do physical things in it, and that's great. But we also have remote access. You can VPN to our testbed and do much of the same things that you can do in person. There are limitations. So for instance, right now, we don't have an automated way for you to press a button. I can imagine creating a robot that would press a button for you, but nonetheless, we don't have an automated way for that. We're looking at ways to automate some of those physical interactions. We also have some current limitations on if you need to drive particular hardware with hardware in the loop simulation, we have to wire that hardware to be in the loop with the simulator that's driving it. that requires some staff time to do that. We don't have an automated way for that yet. We're working on automated ways for that. So there are some limitations to remote work, but trying to get better. We have tons of ICS gear in a variety of different forms, and we're always getting more, thanks to our DARPA project, to support that initiative. And when it's not busy for those initiatives, it's available for other work as well. We have computation and storage support, so all sorts of computers that allow us to do all sorts of things, and all sorts of storage that allow us to do all sorts of things. We also have storage outside of our facility for permanent storage of research data that is provided at the campus level, for instance, for the University of Illinois. And even if it's not our data, if it's CREDC's data, in theory, we can leverage those repositories as well. And those are archival, long storage, DOI reference numbers, referenceable locations. So these are the data sets that are put there are things that must be publicly available and that can be cited by papers with a specific reference to obtain that data and a description of that data and other things like that. And then we have the ability to bring in all sorts of specialized things, either short-term or long-term. So these are going to go really quick. You have the slides, so you can look at that. But we have, let's say, very good network connectivity. 10 gig uplink to 100 gig link to the internet ×2. We're not bandwidth constrained. We can push data around pretty much as fast as we want. And then internal to the testbed, 10 gig links between all of the core switches, and many of the machines have, well, many of the new machines at least have 10 gig directly to the machines as well. We have very fast data storage, so we can store things very fast, and we have long-term archival storage as well that we can use for larger data sets that are infrequently accessed. And then I mentioned, again, the dedicated VPN. And we have isolation capabilities. So it's not just that you are in the test bed and you have free reign over everything. We can lock you into only the equipment that is part of your experiments, so that you can't inadvertently affect anyone else's results, as an example. All sorts of capabilities. I am not going to talk about any of these, but basically anything that you want to do in some way, shape, or form, we are building the capability to help you in that way. We're not there yet. Notice I said we're building it. So we have silos of capabilities. We have the ability to systemically look from one end to the other in some cases, and we're building these modules, building these scenarios, and adapting them. So, for instance, we have lots of IEEE reference models. That's great, but IEEE reference models are only as real as, well, theory allows them to be real. And so we're taking and molding these environments and creating real models that are based, synthetic models, but real models that are built off of these real substations that exist with the critical information removed in terms of what that substation is or where it happens to be. Hardware and software, all sorts of hardware and software that's available to us in varying different forms. A lot of this other schools probably have as well. When you're doing work on our test bed, the work in conjunction with Illinois allows you to use our resources on site here, so we can set up computation and you can use those resources in support of research we are involved in. I have to state it that way. You can talk to me offline if you want to know more, but anything we are involved in where there are Illinois researchers assisting you in some way, shape, or form, which could include testbed staff, if you view that as material to the research, we can help you by giving you access to the things that we have. In support of CREDC work, only CREDC work. Or other joint funded efforts, I guess, too.
Michael Siegel has a question.
Sure.
Does the testbed have smart meters with root access so we can load software on the meter?
So the testbed does have AMI. We have an Itron open-way architecture. WSU has Itron's newer architecture. So there are two labs, in essence, that have AMI capabilities. The answer of root and load things onto it, that answer is no, that such a thing doesn't really exist in any location that I know of. There are Itron development boards that speak similarly, in essence, to the meters. They're not actual meters, and those you do get full authority over. Washington State University does have some of those boards. We haven't had a need for those recently, but we also do have a smart meter research platform that was developed under TCIPG, where it mimics AMI capabilities, and we have everything from the schematics of the board because we built it to the software because we wrote it for that. So that is a platform where one can explore the concepts, but it's not specific to a vendor, as an example. So just breaking down silos, we have all sorts of gear that is in the control center in varying different ways. We recently upgraded our OSI Monarch install, so we have 5 full EMS installs of OSI Monarch. And you could argue that they're basically infinitely licensed. In other words, they have most, if not all, of the features that an EMS would likely have.
Tim, on that last comment, don't you think that if somebody made a little proposal, 1 page, about what they wanted to do with an Itron meter, that Itron would probably just give us one and say, here, take it apart, do what you want, let us know what happened. As a joint thing?
So short answer to that is I won't talk about specifics of contracts or other things. In some cases with vendors, this will likely be posted publicly. So in some cases with vendors, we have agreements that allow us to do reverse engineering in that light, and we have been enabled to do that by certain vendors. But most vendors will not give you the keys to the kingdom on a particular device and just say, go play. There are constraints that one has to have. Itron's response, in particular to that type of thing, would likely be use the development board, not our retail meter platform, as an example. But every vendor has different determinations. So on generation, we have an isolated solar test lab, which is a real physical facility that allows us to do some generation-related work and look at that in a hardware-in-the-loop capacity. That is, let's say, exists but has never been fully flushed out or leveraged in research in a directed way. And then we have an external solar array that's, again, another physical asset. It's 5 strands of different inversion technology where we can instrument that for data collection and or potentially control. Electrical engineering has used it for power rectification circuitry and other things in looking at microinverter efficiency and DC optimization approaches. And that strand feeds a real load, so there's also things we can do on the load side for that. Transmission and distribution, we have all sorts of different relays, PMUs, et cetera. More in the Schweitzer realm that's there, encrypting devices, security gateways, et cetera. And we have handfuls of more stuff coming in a variety of different ways, including a full generation substation, a full transmission substation, and a full distribution substation modeled in the way that can be driven from an RTDS or Opal-RT model and mimics the type of things you would see, not necessarily at the scale, but at least one of everything that you would typically see in a generation, transmission, and distribution substation. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Advanced metering, I mentioned we have Itron's architecture. We also have meter emulation software, Trilliant's Testbed. We have the smart meter research platform, and we have full software stacks. We have all sorts of stacks for different power system protocols, and we have data generators that we'll talk about in a bit, or some of these protocols as well, and we're advancing some of those. And then we also have commercial tools that enable this. We have all sorts of modeling. We have an Opal-RT 5700 that is, in essence, fully loaded. In other words, all CPUs unlocked, all protocols unlocked, unlimited licenses for all of the software in it, et cetera, that enables our work, and we're excited about that. That's a new acquisition. We have two chassis of RTDS. We have, well, here it lists 1 Doble. We now have 4 Dobles, F6350Es, and some variety of other power modeling software and cyber modeling software that's come to bear. Emulab and Deter is a capability. We no longer use it or deploy it, but we do have the ability to deploy it if we want to use that and federate with either Emulab or Deter instances for combined experiments. We try to avoid that. We have better solutions than using that in the lab today. And we also look towards and have availability of things like Mininet, Core, DNS3, OpenDSS, GridLabD, all those as well. If they're not listed there, some of them are. Verignetta.
What is a Doble?
Doble power amplifier. Okay. So it brings low voltage signal to line voltage to drive hardware in the loop. These particular ones, F6350Es, are power grid simulators, so they They allow you to do, let's say, some more advanced functions than simply amplifying a signal, but they're primarily used for hardware in the loop. All sorts of security-specific stuff, all sorts of computation, all sorts of miscellaneous other things that enable us. And then we have some unique integrations, so some special builds of software, some things that aren't yet released by companies, some custom tools that we've developed, et cetera, that sort of bring things together. And then we have the ability to software tap anywhere in the network and pull flows and redirect flows around in the network via SDN capabilities, including having some partially sized or small-sized SDN isolated test beds on complete separate infrastructure too that'll enable some of that work. So I'm going to stop talking now and hand over the talking stick to David Emmerich. So those that don't know David Emmerich has joined our program as of about a year and a half ago now, and he's been leading and supporting some advancements in the usability realm, so he'll talk about that quickly because I took too much time.
All right, thanks, Tim. So I'm going to talk about accessing the test bed, just some things to know, getting access, our portal, knowledge base, remote access, on-site, variety of that. To start with, we have a portal, which is testbed.it.illinois.edu. A majority of your account management will go through there. Got a quick screenshot there just to show it. Our portal is locally or homegrown. Got an idea of what we built it with. Use it for onboarding, maintenance, project access approvals. We have an FAQ, basic help query. It is continuous development, so as features are needed, we add features in time. To get in, you first need a request account if you don't have one already. The most important thing is to make sure that you know the project name that you're involved in to get expedite your access. The project, the access, the request goes to the project manager that you have there. So if you don't know the name, it takes a little bit more time to get through there to the right people. Sometimes it's back and forth there. So after your request is put in, the manager approves it, you'll get an email, your account's ready, got a link. It is time sensitive, so if you don't get to the site fast enough or in enough time, you can go and request a password reset after that. So there are options from if you don't get there in time. There are two types of accounts we've got. We have project members and project managers. Project members can update their account information. They can get a view of their project membership to make sure they're in the right projects, manage their passwords. We have our FAQ or our knowledge base. They're non-authenticated, the unauthenticated knowledge base. And they can request new projects if they have sub-projects they're going to be involved in. Project managers can do everything a project member does. In addition to that, approve their account requests for only projects that they are managing. They can view and remove project managers, kind of a way to keep it, project managers typically know who's involved, so if someone is leaving a project or leaving, they can take them out there to remove access. Give basic details of project members, name, email address, organization, just some basic information there. And if there are new members coming on, you can invite them to the project, kind of save some time of going back and forth with the new members. You can fill out the some basics of so they don't worry about the project name at that point. Email address, they get a link, it auto-fills the form out for them at that point. So saves a little time there. Our knowledge base, pretty basic right now. We've got, it's not categorized, it's got 3-tier access, anonymous, authenticated, and developers. We are adding additional tiers in time, and we are also planning to add categorization in time. But it's pretty basic right now. It's got some pretty good information in there, especially on getting on board, and some basic best practices and information about the test bed. Getting into the test bed remotely, Tim had mentioned remote access. We use Cisco ASA. You have to have a test bed account. If you don't have a Cisco ASA client, you can go to vpn.it.illinois.edu. From there, you'll use your test bed credentials. You would select the Cisco Connect link on the left. It should log you in if you haven't already. If not, it'll let you download the Cisco ASA client. After you have the client, the most important thing is from there is the URL there, vpn.it.illinois.edu. That'll direct you to the right place, and then use your test credentials from there. On-site is we can get access to the CSL studio here. We have Wi-Fi and direct network access. Wi-Fi is restricted to, again, testbed users. We also have a guest SSID and a pre-shared key SSID if needed. So if you have a guest coming in with you and they don't have a testbed account, there's ways to get them in there. And we additionally have workstations. If you need a workstation, you don't have one there, we can get you set up there too. And if you need help, we have chat. It's on our portal also. It's in the lower right-hand corner. How can we help? It goes right to a Slack channel. It's available. We'll respond pretty much during business hours. My only suggestion would be to include your name, email address, in case we have to continue the conversation later, or if it's after hours or anything like that. We'll still see the request in our channel, and we can get to you through a different means there. So now we're going to hand it off to Richard.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if I would like to need to install software, right, and run some experiments, can I do this in the way which you described? I have to come in person to you and tell you what I want to install, why do I want to install. Obviously, I have to tell you anyway. But what is the process for this?
Yeah, so what David has talked about is getting access to the testbed. When you get access to the testbed, you then have to have resources, right? And so resources have to get allocated to your project, which means you have to have a discussion with us about what resources you need. It's not just a free-for-all, in other words, in grabbing things. But what we are moving towards and is in process of implementation at this point is an automated provisioning system with a GUI, et cetera, that allows you to pick from these different types of modules and assets and spin up VMs and configure networks, et cetera, and that pulls from our inventory system and will provision the physical gear, the virtual gear, and everything in between and create the networks as a full sort of service portal, including requesting equipment and authorizing certain equipment pools for you to utilize. Not there yet. We're getting closer. By the end of December, we hope to have at least the first phase of that portal usable with CPS provisioning. But we're about 60% there on getting the first phase done. So we're rapidly iterating. But right now it's a conversation.
How do you stop some disgruntled person from Washington State from getting a VPN and hacking into
there are admin logs associated with the approach, and there are approval processes necessary to provision accounts. And then we also periodically audit the accounts to remove users that are no longer active or authorized to use the system. And then further, we have internal monitoring of the systems as well that look for those types of abuses. But the core notion is as we move forward, and this isn't quite 100% true today, but as we move forward, when you get a VPN account, yes, you can VPN in, but you're dropped in a completely isolated environment that has absolutely nothing available to it. So big whoop you do. And once you VPN into the testbed, there are isolation rules already in place that don't allow that connectivity to go back out. So you can't leverage our internet connection or anything either. You can only leverage your own. So there are isolation and segregation capabilities, and there are audit procedures that we move through to make sure that abuses don't happen. If an abuse does happen, then to the extent that abuse is required for us to engage with law enforcement, we will and have the necessary logs associated with that.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard McQuan. I'm the research engineer here. And what I'll briefly talk about is the different power system modeling capabilities that we have right now in the lab. So the basic aim behind all the power system tools that we have is to support the advancement of research, verification, and validation of not only the cyber tools that you guys might develop, but also the communication and the smart grid tools that can be developed and verified. But right now we are going to talk about the cyber-related tools and how you can basically leverage a lot of power system capabilities that we have. The basic idea behind using all these tools is to generate a realistic power grid environment either it be a power grid system or power grid data, to be able to support the communication overlaying this power grid environment, and finally interfacing with hardware devices to do some sort of hardware in loop or real-time simulations. What we have in general, the basic power system tools are categorized into two categories, one being electromechanical scale simulators and the other being electromagnetic transient tools. In terms of electromechanical tools, we have a number of those, Powerwall, Siemens PSSE, PSLF, which are basically transmission level tools working on three-phase balance systems. No unbalanced can be modeled on them. However, we have OpenDSS with LabD that can handle unbalanced scenarios like distribution systems and microgrids. On the electromagnetic transient tools, what we have are RTDS and Opal-RT. Tim briefly talked about the capabilities of both, and we are going to discuss a bit more on those tools. Real-time, both the electromagnetic transient level tools are real-time simulators capable of interacting with external devices and maintaining the real-time fidelity of the system. One unique tool that we have is Opal-RT's sub-module. It's called ePhaser Sim. It is sort of a combination of real-time tool, but working on an electromechanical scale. So you would think of it as a Powerwall level solver, but being able to talk to external devices, connect to external devices, do communications. But if you are concerned with large-scale systems, 50,000 bus Eastern Interconnect, and you want to have wide area measurements on it, you can use ePhaser Sim and get that capability out. On the communication side, there are a number of ways you can extract data out of the real-world power systems. What we have right now is RTDS's GTNet card, which basically allows you to talk a number of different protocols. Opal-RT's communication card, similar to RTDS, it has a number of power system protocols that are generally used. Number of protection relays that can be connected to the system and get the data out of them. Substation automation systems, the SCADA EMS, the OSM1R that Tim talked about. It supports a number of different protocols. In terms of modeling cases, for the non-real-time simulators, we have the website, the link is right here. You can find a number of IEEE standard test cases that you can easily use and do your modeling and verification and testing. Along with that, we have some publicly available synthetic cases. Synthetic cases are basically cases that are based on a real-world system, but a lot of stuff is anonymized. Let's talk briefly about RTDS, what we have right now in terms of capabilities. What we have in terms of capabilities is 2 racks capable of simulating 16 nodes. Nodes meaning connection points in the power grid. It can interface with external hardware devices, and it can communicate on these protocols, DMP3, 6150 Goose, sample values under 61850, or C37118. A sample use case that we have used RTDS for is based off one of the old projects that we did. We had a real substation modeled in RTDS, and the idea behind this particular scenario was to detect data injection attacks on any of the protection relays or configuration change attacks on these relays. We had the algorithm developed, and the algorithm in theory works perfectly fine. All hoop-de-doo doesn't make much sense unless you don't put it and implement it on a real system, because the real system integrates, brings in all kinds of problems like latencies, timing of the protection systems. Can you detect it before the protection systems act, which are really fast-acting systems? So this was one of the scenarios that we did, and we were able to show and implement the results. And I think we were able to detect an attack, block an attack in under 20 milliseconds before any of the protection schemes kicked in. So this is one of the new tools that we have, Opal-RT Real-Time Simulator. Think of it as a combination of packages. As Tim mentioned, it's a fully loaded system. We bought everything that they had to sell, and we took it. And what it gives us is a number of different capabilities. It gives us capability of modeling transmission level systems on that tool called HyperSim. There is a tool called RTLab, which if you have Simulink models for your systems, whether it be microgrid level models, distribution system models, you can import it into Opal-RT and basically run a real-time simulator, hook up with external equipment, and basically draw your simulation case. The other good part of Opal-RT, what we have is something called ePhaser Sim that I already talked about, and the other one is eFPGA Sim, meaning if you are developing any power electronics, like inverters or rectifiers or controllers of some sort, which require high fidelity, high speed simulation, then you can use eFPGA Sim, which simulates generally electromechanical level tools are millisecond level tools, electromagnetic level tools are basically microsecond level tools, while eFPGA Sim is a nanosecond level tool. So, few use cases. One of the HyperSim use cases that we are using right now is we have IEEE 9-bus system, which is transmission level system representing the WSSC Western Interconnect. What we have done is added an HVDC line, and we are trying to detect attack on the controllers for the HVDC converter stations, basically. What we are developing right now is a complete system that is working right now, and it communicates to an external device or a data aggregator, talks DNP3, takes measurements at different locations, and sends it out to a SCADA system. And you can run your algorithms at any location that you would like. On the RT Lab side, as I said, it interfaces with Simulink and gives you capabilities to do real-time modeling and driving your simulations. What we have here is a microgrid case models in Simulink, which you can basically run on the real-time system. The idea behind here is to detect and demonstrate the capabilities of different cyber detection mechanisms and prevention, cyber attack prevention mechanisms. I'm headed to Prosper. I think he wants to say a few lines.
Thank you. One picture is off of 1,000 words. So I'm going to use this picture the only try to explain the resources we have in our CREDC Testbed. And the resources I'm going to explain here will be mostly connected to the power side and show as well how the power side is interacting with the cyber side. So we have the RTDS, which is a real-time digital simulator, the Opal-RT. What they do is exactly they have the capacity to solve nonlinear power system equation at the speed with the granularity of 3 microseconds to 50 microseconds. That time is enough because the wave propagation in the power system is taking more time than 50 microseconds. So our simulator, the RTDS and Opal-RT are capable to talk with real devices exactly as in the field. It might be in the open loop with components like PMU. It might be in a closed loop with the relay. So in our lab, our simulator can talk with the different protection relay, different devices from CEL, from ABB, from DE, for the protection, but as well with the different automation server, like the RTAC, like Orion, are available. In our lab, we have the DPS time that, the antenna is on the roof, and then we connect at this timing in a way to provide exact timing precise to different equipment we have in the lab. Our simulators, they are capable of talking power communication. So in our lab, we have different protocol communication that we use as the boost, DMU socket, sample value, and the DNP3. We have also resources for smart grid research. Like in this area, we have this test bed which include a solar panel with 4 quadrant power amplifier with capacity to model the 2 flow of electricity as a load or generation. For 6 years now, our testbed has been used to validate research, to validate demo, and used as well in thesis research. It might be master level, it might be PhD level. Validating the test, the research is the key. When you succeed, as Tim said before, to validate the research is the power. And we have this year the opportunity to have this as the double, the answer to the question. For double, for example, allow us to model a large power grid or as well to model and balance power system like in distribution. So the time is running. I will say to everyone who wants to do research and to use this lab that the equipment are available. We think that by the end, maybe in the coming months, we're going to have the largest CEER testbed for university and utility. So those resources are available. This testbed, as you said, is not available for local students from UI. We are on the process to work with a student from Tennessee, so everybody is more than welcome. And at this time, I'm going to hand to the next speaker.
Now we come to the fun part, generating data, really fake data. We have 3 software that we're going to talk about here. 2 of these were developed in-house, the DNP3 protocol generator and the Modbus generator. And the distributed test manager is a commercial software that we have some licenses for. So when we deploy a DNP3 generator, we can act as a relay, we can act as a master, and we can talk to either real-world devices or fake devices. So you can simulate a relay and a master and connect them both too. And this is talking DNP3 here. We also have a multiplexer that kind of mimics the properties of Orion LX, where you can connect to many relays, and we can have a mapping of indexes, DNP3 indexes in the relay, so that you get a unique set of indexes out. And again, this can talk to a real master or a fake one that we can simulate. For Modbus,
yeah, for Modbus, similarly, we have the ability to generate data as a DNP3 generator. Right here, you can kind of see the topology where you have outstation talking to masters. We have the ability to kind of do more of an aggregated kind of topology.
To set up one of these fake DNP3 master and outstations, you need a config file. Here we are showing a sample of a real simple config file where we are simulating a master and outstation deployed at 2 IP addresses. We can even generate IP addresses if you're feeling lazy and want to generate it all on one machine. The master here is polling at a frequency of 12 seconds, and the heart of this is this Lua file for the outstation, where we let you write your own code, your own data generation rules in the Lua language to generate your data. But what you do have to specify in the config file is the DNP3 point. And here we have specified a binary input and analog input data type, both with indexes from 0 to 9. So again, the Lua, it's a lightweight embeddable scriptable language, and you can write your own Lua scripts, and you can supply one or many of them, and have the outstations kind of flip between them or move as you want. And on the right, you can see a sample Lua script where we are generating a really basic data. At every 15 seconds, the analog input is just the index value over here of whatever the point index is. The binary is kind of flipping between zeros and ones. and the counter is also kind of going randomly. But besides this synthetic data generation, we can also replay CSV files. So if you have a CSV file from RTDS or any place, we can replay that as if it's going on in real time.
And a few more words, if you would like access to our in-house built data generators, once you have access to the testbed, you can log into our code repo and pull either the Modbus generator or the DNP3 generator. Right now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Over here we have more proprietary software that's Windows-based. The former two are more or less Linux-based. This is called the Distributed Test Manager by Triangle Microworks, which more or less lets you simulate what you can do with our software, but more on the Windows side, and a little bit more, I guess a little bit more with GUIs and whatnot. So here's some of the capabilities. You're able to do Modbus, DNP3, 61850. You can talk to real devices, fake devices, more or less what we can do, but more on the proprietary side. If you kind of look at the software here, you have the point list for DNP3, you have your log manager and all your network topologies for DNP3 if you want to talk to real devices, fake devices, and what have you. And it also has a really nice scriptable feature, so the events and all of that can be scripted using JavaScript. You can create fancy interfaces such as this, which we currently do not have in our software, but will be building out in the foreseeable future. And I guess passing it off to.
Yep. So one thing that Steve mentioned with DTM is that we have environments that we're creating in DTM, and DTM is sort of you could call it a contained testbed on its own in pure emulation form, but it's using real Triangle Microworks stacks underneath to communicate, and is an easy-to-use GUI with configuring and creating these environments in sort of an initial phase of verification and validation. We have not only the models that we're developing and building in there, but we also have a full sample, let's say, microgrid environment that DTM created themselves, and some various other test case models that they're providing. And this tool is a new tool for them, so we have access to betas of this as well that implement new functionality, including ICCP communications and some other things from there. We have other Triangle Microworks tools as well, including their DNP3 test harness, their ICCP test harness, their 61850 test harness, et cetera, and we have multiple installations of each of those available to us.
So what do you mean by DNP3 test harness? What is it?
It's Triangle Microworks DNP3 test harness, which is a GUI application that allows you to configure either a master or a slave, model its behavior after different devices, communicate back and forth, et cetera.
But the traffic I have to generate, right?
No, the traffic it generates.
It generates the traffic.
On your behalf, yes. And so DTM is sort of take that and make it bigger. So instead of doing a master-slave relationship between the two test harnesses or pointing it at a physical device, let me emulate 50 of these devices or 100 of these devices that are talking. So a little bit on vision really quickly to wrap it up. So we have ambition to do lots of things. We're in the process of realizing many of those, but we're in that process. So consider this early exposure, consider this often exposure, et cetera, that you'll keep hearing from us as we innovate and bring new modules, new capabilities, et cetera. But it's not just us. So this is a call to arms. You guys have research, you guys have tools, you guys have models that you've built over the years or that are currently building that enable your work. We want to capture that. Why? So that other people can use your work, leverage your work, and we can expand on that and say, well, you did a great model. This is an awesome model, but it's not driven by real-world data. And here's some tweaks to it that make it more real. And so that'll help your research be better, it'll help other people be better, and it creates a repeatability that we can use across the projects with efficiency, et cetera. Integrating that into the testbed then also means you don't have to worry about maintaining your own testbed. Hopefully, by the time we get to the point of full provisioning, you can just say, I want my model, click a button, and now it provisions your model, which may be software, hardware, and all sorts of other things in between there. Or it could just be, oh, I need 50 machines that are going to be doing computation for me. Press a machine, or press a button, your 50 machines are deployed with the network for them, the software that you wrote is deployed on them, and it's running now your system. That's where we're going. So What are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to advance the state of cyber experimentation, specifically cyber physical experimentation, right? How many people would love it if they could just take their research environment and press a button and somebody else worry about all the details that make that happen? And if you want a new model, a new distribution substation, new environment, you just select from a list that says, oh, I want something that looks like a Western Interconnect utility, and click a button, and now you have that. And then you do it again and say, I want an Eastern one, and now you have that. And you run your research against that. And not just that, but even get to a future point where we can say, all right, well, here's a, let's say you're doing something in a substation. Here's a substation model. And I don't care what that is, but it speaks DNP3. And so I want a DNP3 substation, and it generates that. I want at least, say, 40 nodes in that substation, 40 different devices in that substation, or 40 buses, a really big substation. And that's what I want. So, boom, I have that. Great. I run my stuff on it. It gives me results. My results say this works. Am I done with verification and validation? Have I done sufficient rigor? Maybe, maybe not. So what if you could then push a button that said, okay, I've confirmed that this works. Mutate and permutate that architecture in 10,000 different ways using real-world methods that determine, different protection settings based on different topologies, different breaker settings based on different topologies, all that solve the same thing. All topologies that are realizable and mapped after the real-world thing, and you just have to press a button, and now you have 10,000 cases that say your stuff works, rather than just one. So that's where we're going. And even to be able to reason about those, so instead of saying, well, I want 10,000 different full substations, I want 10,000 different ways of radial links in this particular configuration. So I want to only vary an aspect of it. Or I want 10,000 different vendors to be, well, there's not 10,000 vendors, but I want some permutation of different vendors that are used here. Or instead of DNP3, I want to see this now with Modbus. And nothing changes, just click a button. Perfect world, not there yet. So all we really need to do is make it easy for you, right? You want to focus on your research, not on all of the mechanics to get to what you want to focus on. You want to write your PhD. You want to prove your theories, not learn the intricacies of an SEL relay, for instance, right? So we're trying to enable that. We want to focus on this by bringing in the modular aspect that I mentioned. We want to drive those models from real telemetry, so getting data. If you guys get access to data sets that are useful, if you find data sets that are from other people that may be useful, or other models that are useful, or that may just be informative to us, send them our way. We'll bring them in, we'll try to incorporate them, we'll try to extend them, we'll try to make them better, whatever it may be, because we don't want to do all the work, right? We want to crowdsource, in essence, you guys to help us do that work, because together we can do a whole lot more than we can as individuals. And then the last thing I mentioned, we want to capture not just your stuff that you're doing on your own, but we want to bring it all together into a way that we can push it out to the world. So when you give us stuff, it's important for us to know, is this sensitive in any way? Where is, in essence, the provenance of this? Where did you get this stuff from? Is there things that we need to protect? Is this releasable? Is it not releasable? And if it is under some type of constraint, like an NDA, et cetera, where's the scoping of that? Is it only Illinois researchers, et cetera, so that we compartmentalize these correctly? And then also being able to look at what these NDAs cover, we may be able to do things like generalize things from it, derivative works, in essence, that may not be covered, or we may not be able to. And so we like to understand that so that we can build these modules and put these out into the world, because ultimately I don't want to just be able to recreate experiments for CREDC. I want to be able to recreate experiments across the world for anyone that has the necessary assets to stand up the experiment or the software licenses to use the things that it uses. Now keep in mind that does not mean that what you release has to be open source, or that it has to use only open source tools or anything like that. If they have PowerWorld, for instance, and you use the PowerWorld model, and you're okay with that PowerWorld model being released, and it's a releasable model, then as long as they have PowerWorld, they can use your model. If they don't have PowerWorld, they need to go buy PowerWorld. So we're not limited to just openly available things. And the last thing is, it's not just about research. You don't just want to prove out research. But how many of you were experts in your area when you started? So remember I talked about capturing your brains and your knowledge, et cetera, right? How does the next person that comes to follow on your work or that wants to build upon your work, the great things that you did, learn all the things that you learned in as fast a way as possible. Well, one way to do that is to take these environments that proved out your work and turn them into education exercises with curriculum associated. So in other words, this is how the system is working, this is what it's doing, this is what the attack is, this is how the attack is enabled, this is why that's an attack, and here's what the defense is doing, here's the theory behind why that defense is doing what it's doing, and its implementation, its methodology, et cetera, and here's the results, and the analysis, and the papers, and the data sets, and the models, et cetera. Now they have a tutorial to get started, and you're not needed to bootstrap them, and you can continue to focus on whatever you are, or off in your career doing your thing, rather than having to reach back, which we'd love you to reach back to, but having to reach back to help somebody build on your work. So that's where we're going. That's all. A whole bunch of people gave us donations and continue to give us donations. Thank you, all those people. And thank you from the whole Testbed team. My contact info is there, but you're perfectly welcome to reach out to anyone if you want to talk to any of us.
Great, thanks, Tim.